Welcome to another exciting conversation brought to you by Speakin on the future of consumer internet businesses in India. Today's session is being moderated by one of the tallest consumer internet leaders in India, Mr. Sridhar Prasad. He's an astute business leader with nearly 2 decades of global consulting experience across KPMG India, Middle East, and Kalari Capital. He is also an active investor and consultant to internet startups and SMEs, helping them scale across consumer internet business ecosystem. Thank you, Mr. Prasad, for taking time out and structuring this discussion today. I leave the floor open to you for the discussion.
Thanks, Nijanj, and thanks, Speakin, for inviting me for this session. And the topic, consumer internet and the future of consumer internet in India. As always, exciting, but I would presume that in today's world, and especially in as we speak, this quarter or this half of the year is even more exciting, considering internet is the only medium which we have to even survive. So in that context, I'm very, very happy to welcome Arvind Gupta as the lead thought leader for this session with us. Arvind is currently the head of Digital India Foundation and works very closely with the government on pretty much anything to do with technology, digital economy, tech innovation, citizen outreach, so on and so forth. He's also an active member of the VCIC committee of SIDBI, which encourages funding for homegrown funds, which in turn fund startups in India. And also Arvind has been a CEO of MyGov and as a head of the ruling party's National Technology Department for the past 3 years, so 3 consecutive terms. So Arvind, as a totally well-rounded corporate administration, as well as supporting the political party from all dimensions of this large country, experience across consumer internet. And Arvind, welcome to this fireside chat from Speakin.
Thank you for having me.
So to set the tone right, consumer internet is a phrase which has been used by all of us. That phrase gave careers to many of us. It possibly started maybe about 10 to 15 years in the country with the start and acceptance of internet and possibly smartphones. And today, where it reaches consumer internet has become the mainstay to any businesses in the country. I mean, we usually, by mistake, we use consumer internet and e-commerce interchangeably, but consumer internet pretty much is today touching upon everything from e-commerce to digital classifieds, to gaming, to e-learning, to digital health, to pretty much any services which our products which we consume. The consumer internet paradigm is not just a medium, it is a strong influencer as well. So from that perspective, I would like Arvind to give his views on the way our country is from the overall ecosystem perspective, what we are offering to all the members of the ecosystem in consumer internet. Arvind, over to you.
Great, thank you. And thanks again for having me. Prior to Sridhar, to doing disruptions in the democratic politics space, governance, I've been an entrepreneur myself. So I've been really associated with the internet industry for the past 25 years. In fact, when in infancy, as a researcher and a grad student in the US, when we built the first browser at DNCSA. So, this is something very close to my heart. And I can tell you that the consumer internet, as you rightly put it, sometimes gets only confused with the e-commerce side, but it's got large implication. And the way I see it is, there's a consumer side, which is a consumer part of the internet, and how the internet penetration is happening. Let's go back a few years and decades, which is a long term in the internet era. But you see, the first wave of consumer internet, mostly in the West, India was not even there on the map. The second wave, India missed a very few survivors from there of today's Indian consumer internet market. But bulk of them didn't survive because, the consumer didn't have the appetite to buy on the internet. There was hardly any consumer on the internet, and there was there was no ecosystem to make the purchases easier, right? The payment mechanism. Now, all that has changed, and all that will change as we go into the future. Today, India has, give or take, and you guys are the best in doing and giving those numbers to us actually, is about 10 crore consumer internet users. And are we seeing a growth in that? Yes, of course, because and these are some of the trends which are very important for me to mention. That India, in another 5 to 7 years, will be the youngest nation with the highest um, free democratic internet population. The current, and I'll show you through some charts in the later half of my initial conversation, is that currently we have approximately 15% of Indian households. We have, give or take, 24 and a half crore households in India of the 135 crore population. And in that, if you see, 50% are middle income. Today, comfortably in that household, at least 2 or 3 smartphones are there. And that middle income households are moving towards 2 things. Number one, more education, and higher internet usage, much higher internet usage. I'll share some numbers. Higher income levels, and the benefits of digitization. They're seeing the benefits of digitization coming to them. This household number from 50% households is going to become 75% in the next 7 to 10 years. So as it is, the target audience is going to increase by 50%, from 50 to 75% of Indian household, as it is with the population increasing. So that's a tremendous growth that we are going to see. The second thing that is happening is, and this is very important, and not only in the Western countries, but this is a very unique trend in developing countries like India, where we have people becoming digitally literate before they're becoming alphabetically literate. So voice is going to play an immense role. While voice for the West is more from a productivity perspective, India, it may be the access. Voice may be their only access to the internet. So voice, vernacular, all of this is going to play a very important role in India. And it already is. It's just at this tip, and it's only going to grow from there. And the last very important point, I think, is that India no longer only consumes in the urban centers, both the internet and the consumer internet. With the COVID pandemic, we've seen a lot of reverse migration, which means a lot of these consumers who were consuming, maybe doing a couple of transactions a month in the big centers of India, in the cities of India, are now living in their villages, in their small towns. And they are not only just educating and creating an ecosystem, but also spreading the traditional word of mouth, the virality of the network effect of the internet. So that I think is changing the dynamics. India has, for the first time in the last 3 quarters, seen the highest amount of new internet users coming from non-urban centers. And that's a new trend across the world. So I think there are good times to come. And over the course of the presentation, if I can start it now, I can share some of these things and how they are all converging into a great consumer internet story in India.
No, absolutely. I think Arvind, you start off with a bang. The sheer scale of the digital and consumer internet opportunity in India, each layer is as big as another country.
Absolutely.
So the additional 25%, which is going to come up, which is largely vernacular and lower middle class, if I may use that terminology, is itself a size of a larger country, right? So over to you. Would hear your initial thoughts on the presentation, and we can converge back on the same topic. Thank you.
I use the presentation, Sridhar, to just also make it a little bit more exciting in times where everything is now being done through webinars. And we don't. If you have some data and facts, rather than looking at us, they probably can. Our viewers can look at some of the data that is coming from a better presentation. You see, what has also happened over the last 6 years is that we have universal mobile connections, and out of that, almost 70 crore internet users in India. And at the household level, as I said, almost 95%, somebody or the other has a smartphone in India. Now that changes everything. And this number of internet users, which is showing at 71.8 crores, it has gone up by at least 10% in the last 4 months. So this 10% increase from 65 to probably 71 just happened in the last 3 months. And you've seen a host of new class of internet users, your kids from grade 5, 6, onwards, using online platforms to learn. Parents, teachers certainly learning a new way of consuming education, healthcare. So we've seen a new class of internet users and digital users, and that's the very, very good silver lining right now in this gloomy times. Two, we all can't underplay the importance of this open innovation as a public good, this whole stack, the India stack that it is playing. I think in the story of India's internet, while and there are two aspects to it, which are very important for us in the consumer internet business also. One is, of course, the ease of payment, which I say is one of the core reasons for success. If you don't have the ease of payment, and you've been an e-commerce guy, Sridhar, for all your life, so you know that ease of payment is one of the most important things. And today you're seeing UPI-based payments itself, part of the India stack, at 1.3 billion transactions a month. These transactions are enabling something, right? I mean, they may be P2P or small purchases, but bulk of them are enabling some consumer transaction. A bulk of them are, part of them are enabling some consumer internet transaction. The second very important point from a consumer internet perspective of this India stack is the customer acquisition cost. Now that I think has to be, we have studied that at length. There are a couple of Harvard Business School business review articles that we've written on it. This has brought down the customer acquisition cost from almost $25 to $30 to $1, less than $1. Now, this is what is also enabling the consumer internet market. When you need to do KYCs, when you need to onboard customers, can you do that very fast? Can you do that in a very frictionless, presenceless manner, which brings down your cost? So these are two.
And Arvind, on that, what's the role of offline, if I may ask you, on this particular point?
Well, role of offline in what sense, Sridhar?
In the drastically reducing the customer acquisition cost for you from $30 to $1. Is there a large role of offline still, or is it purely digital?
No, this is purely digital. I mean, it's purely digital.
Okay.
But the customer acquisition by itself, whether I want to be an offline or hybrid player, if I want to do some kind of KYC today, Sridhar, I want to use India Stack. I don't want to, go through the regular process of paper filling, right? I mean, whether I am a telecom operator or not, but at the end of the day, that's a very important thing. And so, this whole notion of Aadhaar being at the center of whatever we are doing, but this discussion today is not on Aadhaar. I wanted to make two very specific points. Number one, on how the India stack is changing and impacting consumer internet. Number one, bringing down the cost of customer acquisition, which is also one of the reasons why cost of the mobile telecom in India has reduced drastically. Because give or take, if you are able to onboard a customer, what Jio did 4 years ago at $1, less than $1 versus $30, you can pass on those benefits to the consumer very fast. And of course, the payments, this is showing the number of transactions of UPI. And I've been told that UPI in the month of July is going to break all records. So this is the story of India. The other part has been the mobile inclusion. Now, this is very interesting. Sridhar, we have 55 times higher mobile data consumption, 55 times higher mobile data consumption per user per month when compared to 2014 to 2020, from 0.2 GB a month to almost 11 to 12 GB a month. But the interesting part is cost. The cost has gone down from approximately $4 a GB a month to about 10 cents a GB a month. So can you see the comparison from $4 coming down to 10 cents? That's 40 times reduction. And that's the impact that we have had, 55 times higher data consumption. This is what is going to define and is defining consumption in India from purely digital and internet perspective. This is a great income pyramid that I always share. And it's important to understand this, that in this income pyramid, which currently is, the 100 million, below the poverty line and just 80 million households just above the poverty line. And the addressable market that most of the current internet users probably are doing is the 7 million households, of course, on the top, the 50 million middle income groups, and a little bit of the 80 million households, that are the aspirers. But I think that 50 and 80 is going to collapse. And that is going to be the 75% of it. And plus will become 75% of the overall pyramid. 103 is also going to move up. So I think that will change everything. The moment we have these dynamics working in the next 7 to 10 years, overall economic growth happening a lot more, and along with the benefits of digitization. The uniqueness with consumer internet in India, and I'm speaking to an expert myself, is, of course, we are mobile first. It's going to be a lot of driven by regional languages. The new education policy 2020 talks about giving prominence to mother tongue. So you're going to see a lot more people being comfortable with that. Voice enabled, I talked about that. Assisted modes, maybe a question that you also asked offline. We have a lot of senior citizens today, and we've seen that in certain business models in India, very interesting business models where there's a hybrid model. You can, really order online, but pick it up, or order online from an assisted shop. So we have these small citizen service centers where people go and do their internet transaction. They buy their train tickets. So there is that assisted mode concept in India. I'm not too comfortable doing it myself. Can I get somebody to do it for me? That's going to continue. That's going to continue for the next 5 to 7 years, and many such things. So this is the other interesting part, Sridhar, which I was mentioning to you. You see comparatively the new paradigm, and this is, this is very, very specific. We have to see and hope, see whether it's reversible or not. But we are seeing over the last 4 months of COVID, the industry of household care, personal care, fresh foods, packaged food, health supplements really go and being consumed, which was not being done so much on the internet. And this is a brand new market, and this will only keep growing up. And if you see the comparisons where in India versus the rest of the world, we are, the Gen Zs and the millennials are really changing the consumption in India also now. We are following certain trends globally. We are making certain trends for the rest of the world. So I think it's a good mixed approach that we are having. I do want to talk about lastly that all this has to be coupled. The consumer internet story of India has to be coupled with security and privacy by design. We see every day the one of the biggest, and again, as I said, I'm speaking to an expert. So one of the biggest hindrances or deterrents to the internet, consumer internet story is they really don't know whether they're buying fake, but or buying from a fake site, and the money is going to get blocked. Phishing comes naturally with a lot of this, and that also creates a lack of trust in the ecosystem. So I think our overall, we have to pay a lot of emphasis on data security, cyber security, and managing those risks. I think summary, a very clear summary that we will be the youngest nation having more than 1 billion internet users in the next 7 to 10 years. Very large scale internet adoption, digitization across, SMBs, small corner shops you will see selling, and we are seeing a lot of big platform players coming and investing in India, hoping for that. We have more than 20 million SMBs in India, and they will, be doing that. India is becoming a data-rich country before probably becoming an economic-rich country, and household savings are going up, consumption patterns are increasing. Customer acquisition, as we talked about, are absolutely going down, the lowest in the world, and consumption is through local languages, mobile first approach. So very, very healthy trends. And we are adding a whole new lot of consumers, new categories. So the hockey stick curve in the consumer internet business is very much alive, and will keep only becoming more exponential.
Thanks, Arvind. Music to ears. Many of the points you touched upon is actually what the internet industry is also looking forward to, or have been looking at with pride. And you coming from the government and administration, having this kind of depth is unbelievable, and really encouraging for the industry, because government, investors, entrepreneurs, and consumers need to coexist together, and that's where the country is currently going. Now, 2 or 3 key points from your presentation, which really struck me. One is the income pyramid concept, and that is, I think, why this country is unique compared to anywhere else. And the velocity with which the layers of pyramid being broken is what many industries are actually banking on. We all spoke about, end of the day, whether we are an e-commerce market of say 25 billion, about 30 million people contribute, and that's exactly the number you're talking about, the top market. But today, the breakage of this across, primarily because I personally believe it is because of the way the payments revolution happened in this country. Actually, I had a very interesting experience about 5 years ago while I was doing a study on vernacularization in the country, vernacular digital. So I had interviewed, along with a research agency, I interviewed about 3-4 people in villages, and I said, why don't you spend online? So they said, I look at the picture on the largest e-commerce website, I go click. But at a particular point, it asks for OTP. And OTP, Hindi mein kya hota hai? Right? So they don't understand the end game of a digital transaction because of a very simple thing.
Absolutely.
But that very simple thing has been broken with the way the new financial revolution has happened in the country, right? So that has opened up a totally new set of consumers. And I don't think we should be bothered about average, the usual matrices of the world, average basket size, how many times do consumers order. That's all not relevant for such a large country like ours, because we are opening up new sets of internet users, which are as big as I told you, other countries. So from that perspective, I am just taking a thread from what you said, and this is something which I personally research a lot as well, is because of the way our country is today, there are lots of new consumer clusters which are taking shape. Digital mothers, women online, senior citizens, unemployed consumers. These are the guys who are between 10 years to 19 years, who are unemployed, who are digital, and who has a parent like you or me, right? So a lot of these clusters, even another one I heard about is bank employees. Bank employees behave in a particular manner. They are a consumer cluster, right? Wow. So this uniqueness of these consumer clusters, their behavior patterns, and what influences them. So from a digital mother, what influences her, to a senior citizen who is not old. We call them senior citizen, but today's 62-year-old man is not an old man. He's far digitally agile. So this uniqueness in this country is offering a totally different set of a platform for homegrown companies as well as international players in consumer internet, is what my personal view is. Wanted to seek your views on this.
See, I think India is a very unique market. People who have judged India with the same parameters, same KPIs that they've used in Silicon Valley or in New York wouldn't work in India. Dollar terms don't work. Transactional. India is still that the sachet market, right? We invented the sachet in that sense, and versus and there are multiple Indias. So if we brush India with one paint and say, hey, everybody in India is a sachet, that's also wrong. We also have the Costco's and the Walmart models where people will buy in bulk. So India lives in its villages. There's a digital Bharat now, multiple languages. It's a very complex market. I actually want to draw upon a little bit of my other experience running the technology group at the BJP, where we were building the 2014 campaign. And I don't come from a political background. I'm a technocrat, right? I just like to use technology to disrupt whatever I can. It's also a consumer internet study, because we had to go to the villages to understand how people consume information. How do they communicate? And the lessons were amazing. It applies to the consumer internet today. And I think if you take the lens of the Western world and apply it to India, you will end up not succeeding. India, as you rightly said, has different clusters. We have different empathy and the buying patterns in India are very, very different. Consumption patterns are very different. Cost is a consideration, and it will remain a consideration. So I think to see the India growing from a new level, what you asked a question also is, where do you see the homegrown things happening? The homegrown entrepreneurs, so homegrown or indigenized platforms will have the advantage of understanding this India faster than somebody else. That agility, whosoever exhibits that, hopefully people who understand the market better, have been closer, have a ear closer to the ground, probably can understand it better and address it better. The need for the Northeast. So, that is going to be the key going forward. We've had entrepreneurs in the past who understood that, and this is an example from the recent past, 5-7 years maybe, that people understood that while travel people like to buy online, there is a huge class of people who will like to buy from an assisted shop. So, a couple of brands launched this, touch points. They were online. So these online agents were basically booking online for them, and they were coming and, transacting there, creating wallets for them. So India is a very interesting market. And this is the kind of innovation, the market innovation, apart from technology innovation, that will also keep leading India into competing better with I would say, and dare to say that, better with certain Western outfits just trying to operate in India. I mean, that's where Atmanirbhar startups are going to do better, because they understand how to do that innovation, not only from a tech perspective or a process perspective, but also from a market reach perspective.
Actually, at this point, I mean, it's interesting, because when you said this, 3 examples which came to my mind. One is, ages ago, the concept of matchmaking or matrimony came online in India, maybe the first of its kind in the world. And today we see 2 more, which is microfinance, which is predominantly a large Indian concept, as well as gold loans. Gold loans is an Indian concept. And all these 3, we have got indigenous entrepreneurs coming up with a tech stack, a strong tech stack to reach the masses. So it's an interesting story. If you link back to what you said about the breakage of the pyramid, I think that is the crux. The moment the mid pyramid or the lower mid pyramid becomes digital, a lot of their lifestyle may not be your lifestyle or my lifestyle. Absolutely. The way they consume news, the way they invest, right? The way they approach a doctor, to the way they approach how to buy an apartment or a dwelling, is so different from the people whom you and I interact with every day. And that's where, I mean, I would presume there's a large opportunity for real Indian entrepreneurs to look inward for right examples, because the outward looking mirroring to India is pretty much done. We have almost everything which is there in the rest of the world having a copy in India today. And they're doing even better than some of the older ones, right?
So I don't know whether we are copies or not. I probably not agree completely on that. But yes, I mean, the standard, the first lot of models are plenty. We need a lot new models, and a lot new is happening. I mean, I see that in my different roles, the new pipeline of innovators and startups, right from the hackathons to angel funding to VC funding. They have brilliant ideas, and I think they know the problems that the Indian consumer wants to get ease of access to. So they're going to solve that.
Yeah. Just to touch upon, since, I mean, obviously yesterday we got the new education policy coming out, and education and healthcare are 2 things which are in a way unaffected by whatever economic turmoil, ups and downs. So what's your take on the next wave of the consumer internet revolution in these 2 sectors? I mean, specifically healthcare and education. What are your views on that?
These are going to be huge green shoot areas. I mean, we've seen some unicorns already definitely in the tech space, but I think this is just a start. I think I remember an ad of a brand which was a couple of years ahead of its time, I guess, from an advertising perspective, when there was, you could do classes on a mobile phone. And I think that era is now really, we are going to live that era soon. I mean, with the news, limitless education, new education policy also allows you to have a lot of flexibility in what courses you take. You can combine, mix and match, store it in a digital locker, by the way, your credits, and then apply it towards a degree. So It's a very new concept. I think we are, if you combine, Sridhar, I'm going to make a very, very important point here. All this has to be enabled with the right policy, the right agile policy framework. And the two examples you just said are absolutely the right policy environment is being created. And I say being created because policy can never keep pace with innovation. So policy always tries to, but you don't want a lag of 2 years. You want probably a lag of a quarter at best. Healthcare is a great example. Telemedicine.
Yep.
It's all legal now, right? I mean, today you can write a consultation online, and it's a legal consultation. Same thing with health education. You have a new education policy, which is debundling education, which is creating the bit sizing of education. You can now take it, study, at a college online, take 2 online courses. If your college is not offering it, from a different college, combine that, get a degree. So there is going to be a host new opportunities in India. You talked about the test preparation. We're going to have a national testing service kind of a exam now, a SAT equivalent. A huge opportunity in that. So I think, and rightly so, I'm very glad that education and healthcare, and this is what I'm hearing from you also, is going to be a great priority for the entrepreneurs also, because it is one of the biggest societal issues in India. And it's something that only digital, and I've written extensively, talked extensively about it, only digital can help us leapfrog and come to a level that otherwise we'll always be short of teachers, always be short of doctors. So digital can only help us leapfrog into that future, especially ed tech and in education and healthcare.
And these two sectors, for our size of a country, there is no end. There is no upper limit. It's very difficult to do a market assessment as a consultant if you look at it, because it's the entire country, right? End of the day. I mean, the lack of real penetration of health is solved by digital, and people are still uneducated in certain parts of the country. So the market is too large, and you and I are still students. We are also learning.
Absolutely.
So all extremes, the importance of digital learning is spiking a lot. I have another question. This is linked to your experience with BJP and the election campaign, to the platform which has got both of us together, which is Speakin. So what's your take on the business of content in the next 3-4 years?
Content is king, Sridhar. Content is going to be king. I mean, it's already is. We used to say that in the early days of the internet. Somewhere we started, we kind of lost track on that. And I think the other opportunity that we are not talking about in consumer internet is for the content industry, the creative economy industry. Again, we are at the tip of the iceberg in that. India does about $10-15 billion of overall creative economy, which includes filmmaking, entertainment, and all of that. I think this can go up to, and we are less than a percentage point of the GDP in the creative economy aspect. It can become 5 or 6 points. And the content industry is going to be big. Content creators need to understand the value of content and see how to leverage it, what platforms to use, what OTT to use, and how to push it correctly. I mean, this is the big industry, and I think we all need to recognize that when a person is creating content, how much of creativity, how much of backend goes into it, and right monetization of this is definitely something that is desired.
The reason why I picked up this thread on content is again going back to how you started, of the variety of the market and the layering and the applicability of the content. Something which is not applicable to you and me will be a big hit among a particular set of audience in some other part of the country. So nothing can technically fail if you have the access. I mean, the old school story of every Bollywood movie is a hit had it reached the entire country is applicable today for the content economy. Certain concept, for example, if you and I mean, if we are fed a particular content on a viewpoint on something, we may not like it, but there is enough and more audience who are very happy to consume that content. And the dimension of vernacularization also adds a strong layer. The second part of content I wanted to pick your brains is content-based commerce. So content usually is a consumption story, but maybe a good strand from your experience in the United States of content driving commerce across whether it is e-commerce, whether it is classifieds, whether it is even healthcare, which doctor to go to, and the content which guides me to which hospital, which doctor, when to go to a doctor. Are we how far away are we from that kind of maturity from content-based commerce?
See, again, Sridhar, this is the real offline world really converging into online. We are already seeing, content making decisions for agriculture.
Yep.
And agriculture is a great example. I've seen platforms which will probably not pass the muster on the when compared to big e-commerce players, because they're very small, localized, but they have thousands and thousands of videos of farmers sharing the story of what worked with them. They're like the Wikipedia for the farmers. What worked for them, what didn't work for them. And farmers see this. They ask questions and they see these platforms and use these platforms to solve their actual problems on the ground. And then they end up buying the right fertilizer or the right seeds, whatever they need. That's commerce getting enabled using content, and more power to them. And of course, in healthcare, this has been there. Healthcare, though, I think we need to put a layer, because certain times, I think, I'm no expert, but certain times the self-help or the Google Health, searching on Google search and prescribing your
influence
not be the right way to go about your healthcare needs. One needs to understand that and use it very judiciously. But yeah, content creating stories and then using it in the right sense and creating the right influence is especially in non-urban India, is very already successful, as I said, in agri-tech, and will continue to be very successful going forward.
And you touched upon my next thread with your example with the farmer. I mean, I've heard in many contexts the current government's interests. We are an agrarian economy, and we need to ensure that it is protected. And the role of consumer internet, I mean, we all have spoken in many forums connecting the farm to the buyer and farm to shelf using digital. But with the way the current spike which has happened in the past 6 months, where the focus has largely been your own house, your own consumption of food, where does that equation change? Where are the farmers getting access, or rather the reverse, or the middlemen and the farmers getting digitally enabled today, so that the produce is not wasted, the throughput is better because you and I are consuming as much as we want to consume from these farmers? Is there a story building around that now?
See, the farm to fork story has many aspects to it. And I won't touch the agri-tech aspect because we are discussing.
No.
So the real thing is, can we put more, and that helps the consumer internet story, because if we put more money in the farmer's pocket, they also go and consume better. They have the right aspirations to educating their kids, to, their own healthcare and everything else. And secondly, can that produce come faster and cheaper to the consumer market? So, again, policy, APMC Act of so many years has been dismantled. So we actually are trying to reduce the middleman. And one of the big promises of the internet has been the disintermediation of markets. And in the farming market, I mean, you hear the stories and we forget about it, whether 5 rupee a kg in Nagpur is being sold at 100 rupees a kg in Delhi. How can we make it more closer? How can we make it 60 to the consumer and 40 of that goes to, or whatever, 30 of that goes to the farmer? So the more convergence, more internet will do. There is a very big uptake of what is the government's ENAM, Electronic National Agriculture Marketplace.
Okay.
But it's only touched probably 20% of the farmers. And I think that push needs to go where it can go to 80% or 90% of the farmers. And as much as the farmers can sell and have a channel to sell, I think that will be a very welcome thing. Is that happening? The number is increasing. Is it increasing fast enough? Probably not. We need to push a lot more to that. This bundling of the APMC Act may actually do that.
Interesting. I have just 2 more points or 2 more threads to pick up with you. The first being, I mean, the usual question, advice to the entrepreneurs. I mean, before I take your view, let me just start the thread. Does it make sense now to look at the real India? Because the Indians are digital. The ecosystem is already set by the government and larger organizations, so that the cost of customer acquisition has come down. So if your solution is contextually right, the adoption can be higher. In that premise, what's your advice to the new entrepreneurs who has an idea or maybe a pre-idea stage, but they need to understand the availability of the platform in the country from a digital perspective, that they can succeed in consumer internet, provided they know what is the consumer and what is the offering.
That is, you answered the question, Sridhar. I think understanding the consumer is going to be key. Building tech around it is enablement, and with the right innovation. So I think my biggest advice always has been that understand your consumer, and that is it's a often used word, but when people think their consumer is sitting only in the high rises or in certain urban centers, they need to go out to the field. They need to see Bharat, and then in that Bharat is where a host of new consumers would be living now. And the second biggest thing I have is also not only for the entrepreneur, actually, it's also for the angel investors and the VCs, because they overlook that. And everything is saying, did it work in the city? People need to see whether it's, and if it is, I would be very happy sometimes looking at a presentation or a proof of concept or a pilot which has got 100 Bharat customers, means non-urban consumers from tier 2. If you can convert 100 consumers there, you can probably consume 10,000 consumers in urban centers. So if you solve the real tough problems, the other problems are easier. And I think that's
And I think that is, I know exactly what you're saying, and I can echo because I've been on both sides. About 3 years back, about 8 out of 10 investors wouldn't buy a story which is germinated in rural India and coming to the city. The reason I would presume is because they didn't have confidence in the payment systems then. Yes. Will a rural guy buy? Will a rural guy play games? Will he actually buy a mobile phone more than 4,000 rupees? All these were concerns of the high-rise investors across the world, not just in India. You would have seen the Silicon Valley investors. If you tell an India Bharat story 3 years back, I've done this. There's some element of believability which was lacking at that time. And I now, on hindsight, if I look at it, I think it was primarily because of the payment interface. As in the maturity of the payment systems in the country could have been the reason, because there was no consumption happening. But having said that, today I think that is drastically changing, because we see novel ideas of connecting fishermen to novel ideas of real micro credit to novel ideas of sand business, which were all considered old school, difficult businesses, right? Which are mostly Indian in nature coming up. My last thread to you, whatever it be, there is a lot of optimism from the investment perspective in the country in the past 2 or 3 months, right? A lot of big names coming in, investing in one story of Jio. Now, we all want to believe digital India is the next big thing. The investors are looking at us. What about your take on, obviously, investors, more investors from India as a concept, alliance partners, and other governments, considering us as the destination because of whatever you spoke in your presentation?
See, Sridhar, as a last thing I'll say, number one, when big platforms have come and invested in Jio, it's a welcome thing because they're investing in the India story. And I think that also creates an ecosystem, giving the confidence to every other investor that India story is very much there, and please go and invest there. So a lot of investors from free and democratic regions in the world will come and invest in India. A lot more you'll see in the ongoing months. This COVID has, of course, made travel and all of that a little difficult, but we are learning to work in this new normal, and everybody, you're going to see the deal flow continue. Two is that I see, also a little bit of education that India market is now a very, very different market what it was even 2 years ago. This payment, frictionless payments, this reverse migration to villages, and that will be very important for the new slew of investors who come in and invest in India. And three, I think it's very important for investors, for consultants, for advisors all over the world to put some different matrices, different KPIs for companies, for startups in this region, because the standard KPIs, dollar transactions, they don't work. I think we need to reinvent certain KPIs for India.
So since you said KPIs, I was always fascinated by the terminology, which is a digital activity quotient. And where I heard it long time back was in Saudi Arabia, because one of the ministers there said, listen, my country, people consume more data than anywhere in the world. Our digital activity quotient is the highest. Now I'm wondering, what does this mean, right? And when I come back here and if I put that phrase, and if I own the phrase now, because in India, I am bringing this concept. If you bring in digital activity quotient of the 740 million people you spoke about, the digital activities across multiple types, some is payment, some is consumption of news, need not be shopping, leave shopping out. But that metric, India can actually beat the rest of the world, hands down, today, right? Our friendly neighborhood, China, we don't know what is that actual numbers they never share. But our country, because of the diversity of people and the kinds of spread of digital activity which all of us do, maybe you and I are doing digital learning, my driver is watching a movie, right? The digital activity quotient of these individuals are diverse compared to a person in Britain or even a Saudi Arabia. Their activities is linear. Our activity is so diverse, right?
And on a very, very important note, it's also unfiltered.
Yep, absolutely.
What is being fed to you in China could be very, very filtered through a very, very semi-porous membrane, which we don't know what is coming and what's coming. So I think that's a very important thing, because now suddenly when people used to put bucket India, investors especially, into a bucket of emerging markets, I see that emerging market bucket will be separate. India will be a separate market.
Yeah, and I think that's where people like yourself and the rest of the width of the technology brain which supports the government, and people like us and the investors and the consultants need to talk the same language to the rest of the world. That listen, India is not just a country, we are a continent, right? Treat us in a different way. And if you treat us in a different way, there is a larger, a disproportionate investment opportunity which is coming in. We are not linear. And this is the same street that I'd been to the US raising funds sometime back, and they said your country gives 1.5, 2x, 3x, but the rest of the world gives 5x. I think today we can have that confidence and optimism to say, listen, this is a different country.
Absolutely.
See the optimism which is in the country from the investors from those countries itself, putting huge money in one story. So I think we are close to the end of our conversation. I was just looking at the time. I've learned a lot speaking to you, Arvind. But most important than I'm already envious of your role, what you're playing, considering what you know, what you do, as well as the opportunity, huge platform on top of which you're sitting. Just looking at yesterday's release of the education policy and the tech enablement of that being a very large exercise for you and your team. So hats off to yourself, and any closing comments from your side to
I think we all have an opportunity called India. And the opportunity that is defined by the right leadership, the right people, the right consumption, the right demography of India. And so I think we all are at the right place at the right time. And with the right impetus, I think we'll all see a very, very booming sector in the coming years.
Thank you, Arvind, and all the best to you.
Thank you. Enjoyed a lot. Thank you.